Today we're going to talk about how one man is going to get a gun in Valorant nerfed single-handedly. I am, of course, talking about Brock and his Odin.
Stop.
Scuba still on guard though. Attic obviously once more dealing with a utility. Kind going to try and make the treacherous cross on here. Brock again though, going to shut it down.
He doesn't even have to see you! It's just a blender of bodies!
Yes, for those of you who didn't watch Champs, Brock ended up being the Champs MVP, and he did it off the back of simply using the Odin way more than anyone else and obliterating everyone, essentially. And there's stats that back this up as well, because if you take a look at the champ stats in terms of who were the highest rated players, you got Aspas here, you got Rienz here, and here's Brock, the third highest rated player in the tournament overall. And that makes sense, right? Your MVP, the third highest rated player in the tournament, on the team that wins the tournament as well, makes sense for him to be MVP. The thing is though, if you come and sort this instead by headshot percentage, you'll see, 41% here, west side at the top, but sort it by the lowest headshot percentage, and you will again find Brock at just 17% headshot percentage, which does kind of tell you the story of this tournament, that Brock was able to win an MVP basically off the back of using an Odin. But that is what's interesting about what we're talking about today, because there hasn't actually been an Odin nerf yet, but we know that a pretty gigantic patch is coming pretty soon, and if the leaks are correct and stuff of some of the things that we know they're likely to change, then it seems like some gun changes might be in the works as well. And there's also some other evidence that gun changes might be coming, like this kind of leaked screenshot here apparently from one of the Chinese mobile clients or something, where if you look here it says the Phantom does 124, which at the moment it doesn't, but maybe this will revert back to it being the case. Like it was in the old days, where a long-range Phantom will deal 124, although here it doesn't even mention 140 whatsoever, so not sure if this is real or not, if that will actually be a change or not, but again, it perhaps hints that, gun changes to the game are also in the works. But the thing that's interesting about the Odin in particular and Brock at Champs is that whilst other people were using the Odin, especially maybe towards the end of the tournament, a little bit more than they would, it wasn't really that significant in anyone else's hands. This was really a Brock problem and not as much of an Odin problem, because when other people were using the Odin, they were finding what we've historically seen people, find value with the Odin from, right? There would be a couple spam kills here and there. They would often lose duels if they were swinging out, but Brock in particular is just so good with this gun that he makes it look like it's just impossible to play against. Which then brings up the question, is that actually something then that needs a nerf, right? Because if only one guy can do this, is that actually a problem? And let me show you around here, which I think highlights Brock's skill with the Odin and it being a little bit better than what most people are able to do.
RG.
Gotta get a say in this Fnatic, or they are gonna be absolutely herded out of here, but some gonna fall. Gonna find comfort in the smoke as he normally does. Big ult gonna come through though. Scuba gonna find Kron. It ain't over yet. 4v4. What's the post plant looking like?
Players actually looking to reset here, but Brock and Boaster both finding kills.
Blow for blow in this one, and Kayak trying to just shift a little closer, take away some of that space. Alpha still hesitant to even come closer here.
So much time has passed, Lauren.
They've got to get a move on. Kayak just going to fly on in, and NRG play back on the site. You can't get past.
So there's quite a few details in here which I think does show what Brock can do that other people just aren't skilled enough with this gun versus him, right? Like, if you take a look at this, yeah, okay, he's gonna find the first spam kill, right? So he finds a kill there, spamming, but Boaster actually finds one back, and I think that that is something that, you'll often find, this little spam angle here. But just take a look at his positioning in terms of, like, when Boaster is spamming back, he always gets himself into a safe position, right? He's only spamming here, just take a look at him, right? He goes to spam, and then look, Boaster's gonna try and spam back in a second, so spam. He knows that he's revealed where he is. Boaster's now going to spam back at him, but he's already moved, right? He understands that this Odin battle, when you've got Odin versus Odin, he understands when, and that the game of chip damage is very important in this. So if you take a look at Boaster, he's down to 51 HP, but if you take a look at Brock, he's on full HP, right? And this is something that I think Brook just gets more than other players with this Odin is Brook will spam all of these angles that no one else can and get a bunch of kills, and the people will get tilted and they will buy an Odin themselves and try and out Odin him, and they can't because he just understands it better, right? And then even here puts himself on a different angle once he realizes that they're about to walk up, manages to get some chip here onto Kayak as well, and then instantly understands that he never has to swing this angle at this point. He just needs to hold down mouse 1 at this corner, and eventually they're going to have to come to him and get 2 kills, right? So he just understands how this works, right? He understands the metagame of the gun. If you take a look at his HP here, had he been taking some spam damage from Boaster earlier, he very well may have died. Right, he does go down to 35 HP, so he might have died. But he just has that understanding with the gun. He understands exactly how to use it in a multitude of scenarios. But that brings us back to the key question then. Does the Odin actually need a nerf if really only one player is perhaps using the gun at what we might consider like, oh, that needs a nerf, you know, look at the damage that it's doing, right? If there's only one guy doing it, well, there are 2 sides to that argument. You might say, well, no, because if it's only one guy, you're basically just nerfing Brook and you're not actually nerfing, you know, the rest of what's going on. The other argument is, though, that if other people did put the time that Brook has, and he has now shown that, you know, the Odin is a very effective weapon on a variety of maps and, you know, can be used at this extremely high level, that you might just start getting copycats, and then, you know, at that point you just end up with almost an Odin meta, right? Where people are buying the Odin a lot. I mean, Brook was buying the Odin on the second round very, very often in his games. And that's probably not something that I think a lot of you would be excited to see. So you could see an Odin nerf as perhaps, you know, almost like a preemptive, let's make sure that that doesn't ever become the case by nerfing it now. And a lot of people will think that the Odin is cringe or that it is low skill, but as I've just kind of shown with Brook, there is some skill to it, and there definitely has to be skill to it, because Brook is definitely better than everyone else, right? Which implies that there is a skill to using this gun. The other thing I would point out as well with the Odin specifically versus other guns that people might think need a nerf in some way or another, is that the Odin and where it is positioned in the game and what it costs in this game, it does cost more than a Phantom or Vandal. Right, so in a world, it should be able to compete with those guns, right? And obviously it has its strengths and its weaknesses that everyone kind of understands, right? But it should be able to compete with Phantom and Vandals because it costs more than Phantom or Vandals, right? This isn't like a Stinger problem, you know, where many people have been running around with that gun for years at this point and it hasn't got nerfed, right? Certainly not to the point where it should be because that gun is very, very, very strong, right? But the Odin, I think you could argue, isn't actually that big of a problem because, yeah, it should be able to beat Phantoms and Vandals and stuff like that, and it should be able to punish people who don't have shields or have light shields because that's the role of the gun. I mean, that's what it's literally in the game for, so you could argue that Brook is basically just taking this gun to where it always should have been in this game. On the other hand, I do think that we are almost Stockholm syndromed by the Phantom and Vandal in this game. No matter what other guns come out, no matter how strong they might be, like a lot of people agree that the Judge is maybe too strong and the Sting is too strong and maybe the Outlaw is too strong, right? Like all these different guns maybe are too strong, yet most people always buy a Phantom and Vandal. You know, so we are just like chained to them no matter what. And some of you might think that actually having a gun like an Odin and having Brook show this, and maybe if the Odin's pick rate goes up a bit, like that's fine. Because what's the point of having these guns in the game if everyone's just going to buy a Phantom and Vandal every round? Like, is that our goal, to make sure that everyone buys a Phantom and Vandal every single round? Is that the goal of the game? Probably not, because otherwise why have these other guns in the game anyway? And a final point against nerfing the Odin is that you might say that the problem is not with the Odin and the problem is not with Brook. The problem is with the maps, right? You could argue that a lot of Brook's success and a lot of the kind of cringe factor of the Odin is because there are so many walls that are easy to spam through. And if you do take the time, like Brook, to kind of learn those angles and learn what's going on, that it's the maps that are the thing that enable this, right? The Odin actually as a gun versus the other guns in a vacuum is fine, right? The Brook has then mastered a skill that is available in the game for anyone to master, But the problem comes with the map design, and if they Ascentified, like they did with B main Ascent, if they did that to more kind of common areas of Valorant maps, or just changed the damage of spamming through walls, right, and made that less damage overall, then that would probably kind of fix the main issue, because I think that that is what people are actually kind of annoyed about. I don't really think they're too annoyed at Brook, you know, knowing how to use this weapon a bit better than everyone else. I think that people just don't like blindly spamming through walls. I think if you get Sova droned and tagged by an Odin, you know, I think that most people are probably like, well, that's somewhat fair game, right? Like that's an advantage to playing that agent, and it comes with downsides as well later on. But I think people don't like, I'm just going to blindly spam through this wall, and I'm going to get a couple kills from it, or mega chip damage from it, that's going to set us up later better in the round. Now, will they actually nerf the Odin? I do think probably actually they will off the back of this. I think for the reason that I said, that they might be a bit worried that Brook has now shown that this is a viable strategy, and changing the maps at this point is probably a little bit too big of a job, to be honest, for them to do, to, you know, find all the right positions where they don't want you to spam. And so I do think that they will probably nerf the Odin to stop, you know, a kind of greater Odin meta. But maybe on top of that, like we kind of saw earlier in the league, maybe that also means that the Phantom and Vandal will also get some changes like we saw. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments down below.